We are now putting out several survey instruments, both through VFW, through CMTE, that gets at soldiers, just soldier sailors, airmen, marine, and spacemen, I think they're called, right as they're coming out, and we feed that information directly back to DOD. But that's a hard row to hoe. And one of the things we have to realize is DOD has a mission, and it will always fundamentally be at odds with the veteran experience, right? Asking somebody to spend 6 months on Skill Bridge, that is a huge loss of manpower that's always going to cause consternation. When you have to go to a warfighting exercise, you say, well, my mission's here. What do you mean I have to do this? That doesn't mean the DOD is off the hook, right? Because the number one sustainer of the Department of Defense are the people who leave and talk about it and convince their family members that they have to join. But what we need to do is realize that there is much more to receiving veterans than, well, they're just going to show up on my door and I'm going to be able to read their resume and I'm sure they'll be fine, right? We are not inclusive. We don't understand the pathways. And a lot of times, I mean, honestly, are we doing more questions or should we wrap here?
Well, so actually, I was just going to take this opportunity to introduce CVTI's Executive Director, Jason Dempsey, to talk about what's next.
Yeah, so, all right. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you, panelists.
Don't go anywhere. Panelists, please stay. We'll give you a formal thank you. But and so, it's, to answer that question and kind of segue into closing this, recently I was asked to look at some Army and military doctrine and the way it feeds into our national security documents. They rewrite this stuff all the time. And one of the fascinating things about reading some of these documents is it's always hair on fire. The world's changing. There's brand new threats. And it's a constant evolution. Now, you can and should make fun of military doctrine writers for using the word unprecedented 40 years in a row and say, maybe you don't understand what that word really means. Having said that, though, they're moving. They're constantly thinking. And then you look out in the civilian world and you think about how we think about veterans, how we treat veterans, and a lot of it is stuck in amber, right? The question that you got, when you're applying, the question that Curtis finds when he's talking to people about recruiting, this idea of veterans in higher ed, the idea of veteran services, we talk about it in here constantly, and yet you walk outside and say, oh yeah, no, I really want to help vets because, man, that PTSD is just really hard. And that is where the conversation is stuck. And so as we leave here today, one of the things I hope you guys see from this great conversation that Rachel moderated and all our panelists is this space here represents both an accomplishment and a challenge. The accomplishment of this space is tremendous, and it's only due to the vision and stick-to-itiveness of Dean Ahn and Dean Rogers and the continued support of Dean Rosenich. And for those of you who know New York real estate, right, this is a lot, right? I'll put this up against the land-grant college's, 5 buildings that they've dedicated to the vets, right? This is a big space. This is a big deal. It's a huge accomplishment for Columbia to say we are committed to this thing. And, and one of the conversations earlier, what Curtis alluded to was Columbia did great. Columbia does great. And so part of the early conversation was, well, all right, how do we help other Ivy Leagues, other similarly situated institutions serve this population that Columbia simply can't accommodate all of? Well, that was kind of part of it. The reality is, though, we learned that Columbia does not have all the answers by any stretch. And one of the reasons this space is stuck in amber, the reason so many people are fixated on PTSD and a very simplistic view of veterans, is because we're all rowing separately. Like, well, I'm going to provide services in this space to these veterans, and I'm going to count the head count, go through, I'm going to keep my funding going, and push them through, and that's that. But just like the national security landscape evolves, so does the veteran population. And so when each of us are stuck in our own little lane, we're not advancing a robust conversation that has meaning to everyone. We're advancing our own interests, our own small subset. And that's why when we talk about the mission here, what we realized is, holy crap, there's a ton that we can learn from Texas A&M, from JP Morgan, from brand new veteran startups that are being started up by folks who are literally just leaving the military and figuring this stuff out. And it is all of that that informs what we want to do, because we've got to get the conversation beyond, hey, I'm a white male, I've got a beard, some tattoos, and I have PTSD, steer clear. That is such a worthless conversation. It's not helpful to the kid with beards and tattoos, and it's certainly not helpful to everyone else. And so what we're really working here is to figure out, how do you get an inclusive culture? How do you make those conversations? And you can't even pretend you're doing it if you as an institution, or you as an organization, aren't having these kinds of inclusive conversations. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're really glad you could all be a part of it. As part of this, we've been trying to open this center for ages. We got hit by COVID. We got some building issues. We shut down for a year. We're finally open. We are going to do a formal ribbon cutting towards the end of this year. But one of the things that indicates that we are official, let me set this down, is we've got coins. And so I'd love to hand some of these first coins to our panelists and say thank you for what you've done. Yeah, they do say, collaborate, convene, empower, force, multiply, all the things that we're trying to do. But I also remind you that, for those of you who don't know about coins, they've kind of grown. Everybody had a coin now. Everybody gets ones. We hand them out like candy. It used to be part of the British Red Health System and grew as an indicator that you were part of the unit. And it came with an obligation. You can't just keep this on your desk, because now you're committed to a lifelong game of chicken. That lifelong game of chicken is, if I have my coin and you don't have yours, so you're buying. That's the real need. So, all the BS you hear about coins and all that, throw that away. The real reason to have these is for that. So, thank you for coming.